Hello. I am going to be talking about betrayal in this video, the betrayal of the British people. I am absolutely certain that this betrayal has been going on worldwide, but we happen to know about the betrayal of the British people because of the dishonourable behaviour of this woman who should be given a medal, although I doubt she will be. Okay, now in a previous video I made, which was called Why is the Media Attacking Isabel Oakeshott for Exposing the Truth? I got a comment underneath it from somebody who said, because she was dishonourable, she betrayed a trust. Indeed she did. But we are talking here about a much bigger betrayal, aren't we? A betrayal of an entire country, an entire population. And the funny thing is, it seems to have all been driven from the left. Let's just hold that thought. And I'll tell you, I'm granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I'm also on Twitter, Gab and Parler, where I am at granniopteryx, and it's on those platforms I let you know when I've uploaded a new video. Please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe. If you're subscribed on YouTube, check your subscription hasn't been dropped. Okay, yes, also you can help me financially, buy me a coffee. There are a couple more links. All the links are in the description. Right, let's talk about Miss Oakeshott. Following the publication of the lockdown files in the Telegraph, Mr. Hancock accused Miss Oakeshott of a massive betrayal and breach of trust. Okay, so let's talk about this breach of trust. In what way has the government breached its own trust? Well, apparently, and I can't find the link for that now, but apparently Boris Johnson wasn't being told of the latest findings. Things were being kept secret from him, and they were being kept secret by this chap, Simon Case, and a group of cabinet ministers that he'd gathered around him. Now, I will talk specifically about Matt Hancock. Apparently, Matt Hancock isn't that bright, because anybody with any intelligence would know that such explosive stuff as his WhatsApp messages would not be kept a secret by this woman. Now, a few people have mentioned that Hancock appears to have his brains somewhat lower down his body than his head, and I'm quite sure of that. But this guy, Simon Case, is a top civil servant, and I want to tell you something. I'll bet he is really, really, really intelligent. You don't become a top civil servant by being stupid. A lot of the lower grades are thick as planks, but you get to the top, you are genius level intelligent. And he knew exactly what he was doing. And he was also, I can imagine Matt Hancock being completely bowled over by the superior intelligence of this man. And this man is not a man you can trust. So let's talk about the betrayal of trust that he showed. Now, before I do that, I'll just come up with a couple of Guardian articles. Guardian, go out, catch COVID, ignore the science, or trust in Chris Whitty, according to John Crace. People are wising up to Boris Johnson and choosing to listen to unelected experts. Unelected meaning unelected, and experts meaning medical authorities, you know, like Neil Ferguson, for instance, who was an expert, who was such an expert. He told Boris Johnson that the world would come to an end if we didn't lock down, and then invited his girlfriend to cross London to come and spend a couple of hours breaking the lockdown. Okay, right. And so that's the sort of people who were pushing the agenda. And again, The Guardian, the BBC, like that. Anything that turns up in The Guardian turns up in the BBC a day later, or vice versa. Right. So let's get on to what this guy is saying. And in it, you see a level of cruelty and snobism that's almost incomprehensible. The UK's most senior civil servant mocked travellers who were being locked up in quarantine hotels during the COVID pandemic. He was enjoying their discomfiture. He was actually enjoying it. In an exchange between Cabinet Secretary Simon Case and Matt Hancock in February 2021, the then Health Secretary said they were giving big families all the big suites and putting pop stars in the box rooms. So he was really enjoying this. Now, this really reminded me of a comment made by a cabinet minister during the Tony Blair government when they were relaxing the immigration rules to get more immigrants from more third world countries. And what this cabinet minister said was, we're going to rub their noses in diversity. And by their, he meant the Conservatives. But that just shows you the narrowness of his mind, because it wasn't the rich people on farms, the toffs or whatever, suffering from this influx of people with a completely different moral and ethical system from the people by whom they were surrounded. No, it was the poor people who were going to suffer, because these immigrants were put in poor areas of town, not on rich people's farms. So it was the poor they were throwing under the bus. It was the poor whose noses they were rubbing into diversity. And this is the whole thing. So he is enjoying the idea that pop stars are in box rooms. But, you know, these pop stars are people who are working and earning money for Britain. They are paying taxes, and very high taxes as well. We are more taxed now than we were 20 years ago. We are more taxed, more taxed now than the British people were just after the war, the Second World War. And these pop stars who happened to live here were getting put in box rooms, and Simon Case was enjoying that idea. Look, I just want to see some of the faces of people coming out of first class into a Premier Inn shoebox. That's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that that's how he felt. I'll bet you he goes first class, and I'll bet you he would have the "do you know who I am" attitude if somebody put him in a shoebox. A few days later, Mr. Case asked how many people had been locked up in hotels the previous day. He was really enjoying this. Look, Mr. Hancock responded, none, but 149 chose to enter the country, so they chose to come back, and are now in quarantine hotels due to their own free will, to which Mr. Case replied, hilarious. Oh yes, this is so funny. Yeah, we earn money and pay taxes so you can make fun of us, Mr. Case. Now, I am absolutely certain that Matt Hancock was completely carried away by the superior intelligence of Case. I'm sure of that. That doesn't mean it's excusable. It just means that it's Case's idea. And it was part of the same Guardian reading, BBC idea that the people need controlling for their own good because they're not too bright. And quite frankly, the way Mr. Case was controlling Matt Hancock, you can see how that attitude got started. The next month, but you know, it's not just Mr. Case. The next month, Mr. Hancock shared a story with Mr. Johnson about two people who were fined £10,000 for failing to quarantine after returning to the UK from Dubai, with the Prime Minister responding, superb. Now, that's not quite the same as this. You frightened them enough to make them enter quarantine themselves. and saying it's superb that people were fined for coming back from Dubai and not quarantining, because Johnson was being not told about the doubts about lockdown. They were keeping this secret from him. Mr. Hancock has described the leak of tens of thousands of messages by journalist Isabel Oakeshott as a massive betrayal used to produce a partial biased account to suit an anti-lockdown agenda. Yes, there was a case for lockdown, but the fact is the case was never really examined, and it wasn't examined because of people like Simon Case and by people who felt superior to the average person, people like these guys who were writing for The Guardian, or people who were parroting the same stuff on the BBC. It was a betrayal of the British people. And yes, Oakeshott is almost certainly serving the agenda of the Reform Party. That's for sure. And she did act unethically by revealing the material after she'd signed a non-disclosure agreement. But we have to know this is something that should not be kept secret. And something else, everybody should be studying this, should be studying how when you give a government control like this, you encourage them to have an attitude to you which is not healthy. All right, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.